Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Volume 13, Chapter 9. And I have to say, Chapter 9 was rough. Chapter 9 was another one of those chapters where, as I'm reading it, I have to, take breaks, between each line. It's like, ugh, gosh, this is hurting so bad. Just a lot of stuff hit personally. More Zenith, more Paul, more family, that kind of stuff that just... oh, it just wrecks me. Just so many beautiful moments, but at the same time, just so much that just really, really hurt. And I think that was a great new chapter to kind of go into, following, like I mentioned last Mushoku Mondays, 7 and 8, which weren't my favorite. But yeah, 9 and 10 were fantastic. 10 was okay. There was a lot of aspects of 10 that I was just waiting for a long time, so I cannot wait to talk about that as well. But yes, as per usual, thank you to everybody that dropped by for the premieres. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Make sure to hit the like button before you leave. Additionally, I greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel through monetarily, tips, links, memberships, Patreon, all that kind of stuff. It means so much to me that you guys will support this in order for this to keep going. It's great. And yes, if you cannot, I appreciate all the kind words. I appreciate everybody that checks out the videos, all that kind of stuff. That does keep it going as well. So with all that said, let's jump into Chapter 9, The Party. They scheduled the party when Norn was going to be staying the night with them and Roxy wasn't going to be working. Ariel also gave Sylphie the day off. Rias kicked things off by calling Norn, Aisha, and Roxy to the living room. He asked if they wouldn't mind coming along with him for the day. But secretly, he was trying to get them away from the house so that his accomplices could pretty much set up everything. Roxy spoke up, "Of course, Rudy. I'd be happy to come." Roxy, as planned, of course, quickly agreed. But she had no idea that she'd be going to be surprised herself. Rudius cackled in his mind. 5D chess. Aisha turned to Lilia. "Hey, Mom, can I go? I've still got some work left to do. You were invited by Master Rudius himself. Of course you can go." Aisha nodded happily. Of course Lilia is in on it, but at the same time it's like, yeah, it's your master saying that. Don't ask me. That'd be so funny if Lilia's like, yeah, Master said it, but I'm the law. Anyways, Norn, on the other hand, paused and then turned to Sylphie with an anxious look. "You're inviting Roxy, but not Sylphie?" Sylphie jerked her head towards them, a bit flustered. She's like, wait, that wasn't supposed to happen. That wasn't a part of the script. Well, I have to look after Lucy. Didn't you both go out with Rudius the other day? Are you really all right with this? Sylphie looked to each of them, but then seemed to think of something. "Actually, the whole thing was my idea." "Huh? What do you mean?" "Well, Norn, you haven't really warmed up to Roxy yet, right?" I guess not, no." "Yeah, and it's not much fun having all sorts of tension in the house. I thought it might help if you spend a little time together, you know? It can't hurt to get to know each other better." "Oh, I see. All right." Norn seemed convinced, but Aisha, a little dubious. Aisha was already getting along with Roxy, bringing tea and snacks to her whenever she was working late, preparing for the next classes. After a bit, though, she seemed to decide the details weren't important. Shrugging her shoulders, she smirked to herself. Yeah, if she hadn't already figured it out by this point, she's figuring it out. She's like, something's up. Rudius thought, please don't tell me she figured it out already. Yes, she did. But it's like one of those things where she's like, hey, something's up, but she's not going to question it because she gets to go out with Rudius. Why would she? With that, they headed out. They had to give plenty of time for them to set up. Lilia and Sylphie were cooking, grabbing presents, and decorating by themselves. And yes, technically, Sylphie had to go get the presents, so they can't be in town, so he decided on fishing. He took the three of them outside of the city to the river. "Fishing, huh?" Roxy and Rudius chatted quietly. "Yep, seemed like it'd be a good bonding activity, don't you think?" "I see, so Sylphie wasn't completely making all that up earlier." Rudius got everything unpacked. He really only had simple wooden things, lines made from giant spider silk, floats made from frog sacks, iron hooks, and earthworm bait. Norn spoke up a little nervous. "I've never fished before, you know." Aisha, a bit chippery, said, "Me either. I've always wanted to give it a try, though." They didn't hesitate to grab their share of gear. Aisha quickly attached her float and hook, jammed the earthworm on, and then ran off to the stream. Within seconds, she tossed her line into the water with an exaggerated motion. Was this really her first time? I start to wonder with how it kind of goes later on. She's lying all along. Norn then spoke up. Rudius, how do I put this on properly?" "I don't know either. I've never fished before in my life, you see." With yes, his previous life being a NEET, he'd never gone fishing. He never even had any interest in doing so, which was the same here. If he wanted to fish, he would just freeze all the water solid. Roxy then offered hesitantly, "Would you like me to teach you, Norn?" A stroke of luck. It sounded like Roxy had some experience. Which, yeah, makes sense because she's been traveling so much. "Yes, please." Norn took her up on the offer, but looked a bit conflicted. She was a faithful member of the Mills Church, so she probably felt a little bit awkward around Roxy, who was his second wife. Still, it didn't seem like she actively hated Roxy. Not on a personal level, at least. This is one of those moments where it's like, it's been happening a lot lately too. It's one of those moments where it's like, you almost feel like you know the characters more than Rudius himself does, because Rudius always assumes the worst, it seems like. Not the worst. I wouldn't say that he assumes the worst in all cases. It just seems like he always accepts that there might be a very nasty aspect here, and I guess accepting that early on can make it less impactful when it actually gets revealed. So if I assume that this person is really hates me, and then like 2 minutes later, and you don't really act on it. It's not like you're actively saying, my gosh, you hate my guts. You're just kind of in your mind accepting that. And then the moment that it actually comes out that they just dislike you a little bit, it's like, oh, that's better. But it's like, this is one of those moments where it's like, I don't think Norn has a distaste or anything for Roxy. There's a side of me that almost thinks that she's hesitant and conflicted because she wants Rudius to fish with her, not Roxy, who she barely knows. I think she's got more of a bond with Rudius and is more comfortable with him. I don't think there's a chance that right now she's thinking, oh no, not the second wife, but she's a second wife, and the Millis Church teaches this. I don't think that. I don't honestly think that. It's just unfamiliarity, and I wanted to do this with Rudius. All right, now, you try. Like this? That's right. You're good at this. Thank you. Roxy was patient and polite about it. In return, Norn listened carefully. It was a good sign. He really wanted them to get along. After everything was set up, they lined the stream. Roxy's experience was obvious as she perched on a chair that he made with magic. She squinted at the water carefully. With the slightest vibration, she pulled a rod up with remarkable speed. While nothing big yet, she caught more than anyone else so far. Norn spoke up. You're certainly good at this, Miss Roxy. Well, yes. Back when I was on the road, it was important to find my own food whenever I could. Norn replied, come to think of it, Rijerd used to catch a lot of fish for us when we were traveling together. Oh? Is he a fisherman as well? No. He used a spear. He would just thrust it in the water and then pull it back with fish on all 3 prongs. I like the addition of the fact that he catches one on each prong. Like, he doesn't just always catch something. He's literally catching things on 3 different prongs, like, because they have to be lined up in order to do that. It just, like, takes his skill to, like, the next level. Like, he doesn't just get 1 fish. He doesn't possibly get 2 fish. Like, 2 would probably be... I could see myself, if anything, being able to pull off 2 if I worked hard enough on it. But catching 3 in a row, that's pretty crazy. But yes, of course, Papa Rijerd taking care of the girls and catching fish. Norn sat next to Roxy. While conversation was still hesitant, it seemed like progress. Oh, Norn, you got a bite. Pull it on it. Huh? Oh, what? Okay. Don't worry. It happens all the time. Let's just put a new bait on. While Norn had trouble focusing on her task, she had a cheerful enough expression. She seemed to be enjoying her conversation with Roxy in itself. It's good. I like to see the bonds. Which again, in the previous chapters, we were kind of hitting on this idea that Roxy was trying to get to know Norn better. That's why she knew what Norn wanted. Boyish stuff. Aisha, who was next to Rudius, spoke up. What's the matter, Rudius? You haven't been hooking anything. Aisha was producing impressive results, hooking 3 fish herself. She's a genius. She's always a genius. Of course, she had a head start. That's cheating. Don't forget our little bet. The loser has to do anything the winner says, no matter what. Yes, yeah, when I read this, I'm like, you idiots. You idiots. I was like, okay, either he's an idiot for doing this, he's a genius because he's doing something that's going to get her excited and she's going to have fun, or he's a jerk because he's planning on just freezing the entire lake in the end. Oh, so you think you won? Freeze. Yeah, looks like I won. Yes, he foolishly agreed to compete with her. 3-0 was the current score. Both being first-timers, he couldn't figure out why she was doing so much better. Okay, kiddo, just try to make sure it's something that I can actually do. Whatever shall I choose? Maybe I'll make you hug me all night long while whispering how cute I am. Oh, or you could just teach me some of that stuff you do with Roxy and Sylphie. You knew it was coming up. Everyone knew it was coming up. Yeah, nothing too adult, please. I don't want Dad getting angry at me. Hey, it's not fair bringing up Dad. I found that a little bit odd. Again, we rarely ever get Aisha talking about Paul, so to see that she's... Again, this could just be like a slightly funny kind of response, but in actuality, it really does feel like she's going, don't bring that up. Or it's probably not like she's actually angry that he's bringing up Dad, but it's a cheap move for him to make. But still, for her to even be upset by that whatsoever does finally give us some indication that she cares for Paul whatsoever. Again, Aisha's like she's like the wild card when it comes to Paul. Like, does she even care? Which again, I acknowledge is pretty much Lilia's fault. Lilia was always hoarding Aisha's time from Paul. Rudius wasn't worried. For all her teasing, she probably would just settle with an expensive trinket. Still, he felt it'd be a problem for his sister to beat him. It was too early for her to be surpassing him like this. He had his dignity as the head of the household to defend. It was good to be the beloved big brother, but better to be the feared big brother. No, I like the first one. I like the first one better. But again, that goes back to that whole discussion on the idea of what's more important, to be lovey-dovey or to be stern and strong. And I think particularly for the Rudius, the Grey Rat household, I think with the main thing out of all that, I think Lilia is a strong, stern figure. But they need a male figure. They need a strong figure. They need somebody that can stand and show the house that it is safe. And yes, granted, we have Roxy and Sylphie have like crazy magic too. Lilia knows swordsman skill as well. I mean, we're not like a bunch of weaklings in this house. The females of this house can destroy a lot of people that would enter it. But still, it's like that mental, physical nature of it. The house needs some sort of sternness to it. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like it has the structure it needs. All right, Aisha, I'm taking the kids' gloves off now. What? You've been taking it easy on me or something? That's right. From now on, I'm going to use my demon eye. Hey, that's not fair. She could complain all she wants. But with his eye, he could obliterate the stream. With a smirk, he activated his Eye of Foresight and stared at the float. He stared. Seen a twitch? Practice arms and a new hand? No fish could resist him. His prey was a big boot. I knew it was going to be a boot. No, watch, when he just pulls up geese. I don't know why randomly geese popped in my head. He just pulls geese out of the water. Boss, you got me. Anyways, that's random. It made sense. The river was connected to the magical city of Shariah. Many used its river to wash clothes and fill buckets. Adventurers even used it, so somebody probably fell in and lost their footwear. Rudius, Aisha said with pity in her eyes. He had to look at it differently. It wasn't a boot after all. It was a fish that sort of looked like one. Wasn't that good enough? Yeah, it made sense. Nodding to himself, he tossed it in the bucket. All right, Aisha, that's one. I'll catch up to you in no time. What? No, that's a boot, Rudius. I'm sure it looked that way to you, but it's actually a boot-like organism that lives in the water. I call it the boot fish. Not even creative. That doesn't count, okay? That really doesn't count. Aisha then grabbed the boot and chucked it in the water. No, you're not supposed to throw trash in the river. I like how he admits it there. It's like, no, it's a fish. And then she throws it in there. Don't throw trash in the water. I don't know. Boot-like fish can be trash. He thought, so be it. We'll call it catch and release. It's still a baby, right? It had to return to its natural habitat. Pondering on this, Aisha caught her fourth. He wasn't going to win this battle. He had to apologize to Roxy and Sylphie for becoming Aisha's plaything that night. I love this. I love these little segments like this. I do think that every now and then whenever, especially with Aisha, whenever Refugin gets in these little goofy little slice of life comedy moments, they just work so well because it feels natural. Like this isn't feeling like it's forcing itself. This isn't like suddenly out of nowhere Aisha does tumbles and she falls in the water and then you hear like the sad trombone noises. It feels like it all plays out naturally and it makes sense. I can see a father catching a boot and trying to prove himself and going, nope, that's actually a boot. I can totally see that. We're gonna start getting into the father stuff now. Zap. Glancing over to some noise, Roxy was guiding Norn into pulling in a big fish. Yes, I did it. I caught my first fish. Wow, look at it. That's a big one too. Norn celebrating with a big smile, Roxy clapping her hands in delight. It was a heartwarming moment. Everything aside, he was glad he came. I look cute. Roxy, you're clapping for her. Good job, Norn. After a couple hours, the sun started to sink. Okay, everybody, it's time we head home. What? Already? I was hoping to catch one more. Time flies when you're having fun. But there was more fun to come later. Yeah, that's kind of the nice thing. It's like, you know, things are going well when they just don't want to go home. Sorry, girls, monsters come out sniffing whenever it gets dark. You could just blast them for us. We've got Miss Roxy here, too. Fair point. They weren't really strong in this area, even in groups. But that was no reason to give in their demands. They'd be here all night. It's like, no, but you still have the party. I can see that. Like, I could totally see that aspect of, like, they're enjoying their time so much, and Reese is like, you know, I guess we could technically stay. I'd have to run to the house real quick because they're sitting there waiting at the door, waiting for them to come in the door to go cheers. And then, like, they're standing there all night waiting for them to come home. I bet, like, Sylphie be chucking on those magic boots and then running around the city looking for them. That'd be funny, actually. Sorry, but the answer's still no. We can always come back another day. You're just mad that you didn't catch any yourself. Hey, come on. If I got serious, I could catch all the fish I wanted. It was true. Even if he fell at the rod, he could just electrify the water or set off an explosion. He wasn't just being a sore loser. No, the fact that you are contemplating that makes you a sore loser. The fact that you're like, I could just blow it all up, that's a sore loser. Don't let that little girl get under your skin. Come on, man. Before they left, they froze the fish they caught. While they could grill out, it was best to make it to the party hungry. On the way home, Norn and Aisha chatted happily, Roxy and Rudius following behind them. Roxy had a look of quiet satisfaction on her face as well. This means so much. This, like, again, one of those cute aspects of this whole situation. But honestly, within this whole formation, these four individuals, Roxy and Norn was probably the massive progress that they can see with this whole thing. Not that I felt like Rudius had that plan at all. Roxy just stepped in, and so hopefully this is a great push forward for the two of them. Again, Roxy is trying to establish herself as a part of this family, whereas everybody else knows each other. Things have been awkward between Norn and Roxy, so this felt like it was a big step in the right direction. When they arrived home, the instant they stepped inside, they were greeted by a burst of applause. A sparse but enthusiastic ovation. Sylphie, Lilia, and Zenith were all waiting for them. Zenith didn't join in the clapping, of course, but he thought he got a hint of a smile. Here's gonna go, it's gonna suck. It's gonna really suck. I hate this. It's gonna suck. This is where everything starts going downhill, by the way. Warning, content warning. Sobbing grown man coming. Norn let out a little yelp, and Aisha froze. Rudius and Roxy joined in the applause from behind. Norn's eyes looked to Rudius with surprise. She clearly hadn't figured out what was going on. All right, everyone, let's go in the dining room. With a smile, Rudius pushed the confused Norn and dubious Aisha forward. I could just totally... It's such a cute mental image. I could totally see this. They're just like going, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like the kids that just got completely caught off guard. The dining room was full of simple but attractive decorations. Nice flowers on the walls, candles gleaming around the place. Table covered with a nice white cloth, with plates and vases with flowers sitting atop. At the far end of the table, there were two seats of honor sitting snugly next to each other. Offering Aisha and Norn a seat, Norn spoke up. Wait, but, what's going on? Ha ha ha, so that's what this is all about. Aisha, on the other hand, was smirking knowingly. The girl was sharp and probably sensed something was going on. After everyone took... But there is a side of me that's like... I wonder if Aisha's acting like she knows what's going on. Yeah, I mean, we used to do this back in the day. When a surprise birthday happened, you were like, yeah, I knew it was happening all along. After everyone took their seats, Rudius cleared his throat loudly. Okay. Drink. Here's starting. Gonna drink. It's been 7 years since the displacement incident. It wasn't easy by any means, but our family is finally back together again. We lost our father, yes, and our mother's memories might never return, but I don't think Dad would be too pleased if we moped around forever. He paused, looking around, and that's why I wanted to try and that's why I wanted us to try to smile again. When we can, at least. It might almost seem disrespectful, in a way, but Dad wanted us to have a party once we all made it home, you know. I think we all owe it to him to have a good time tonight. It sucks, the idea of... it does feel disrespectful, but at the same time, it's that aspect of we have to move on eventually. Like, you can't stay sad. And it's like the old saying goes, the idea that anybody passing on is not going to want their family to stay still. They're not going to want their family to sit there and cry. It's like the celebration funerals. The idea that when I pass away, set up the biggest celebration ever. I want everybody to be happy and just move on. I want that to be my last memory of you, sending me off, that you're happy and you're joyous. Go celebrate. Have fun. Move on with your lives. Of course, it hurts the most in this regard because this is the party that Paul was supposed to be a part of. So obviously, having that party now, it hurts. Rudy's thought the whole thing was Paul's idea, in a sense. He even put that in his letter that he sent. It was sad that he wasn't there to see it happen. It made Rudius' chest hurt just thinking about it. But for Paul's sake, as well as theirs, he really wanted them to enjoy themselves. Like I said, every line, and it gets worse. Norn and Aisha had their whole lives ahead of them. He didn't want them to be hung up in the past forever. Of course, giving a long lecture wasn't the right thing to say. Hold on. Go back. Nora and Aisha had their whole lives ahead of them. He didn't want them to be hung up on the past forever. Rudius. I think this is probably like a product of the fact that he is technically mentally, he's hitting 50 here. He's in his 50s. He doesn't realize Rudius, at this point, in this paragraph, Rudius is 17 years old. He's still got, they're like 11, he's 17. I mean, 6 years, not that much of a gap here. I mean, yes, 50% more age there, but you still, how much time you have remaining is massive, comparatively. You're equal here as well. But maybe it's because Rudius assumes Norn and Aisha are hung up on it. Again, I argue, I don't know. I haven't seen any indication that Aisha's hung up on this. I haven't seen any indication of what Aisha thinks about Paul. Norn, yes. Norn makes perfect sense. She's definitely probably still hung up on this. But yeah, anyways. Of course, giving a long lecture wasn't the right way to set the mood that he was going for. They can save their memories of painful, difficult times they'd gone through for the darker moments they'd run into down the line. If nothing else, it could help to know I've been through worse before. So painfully true. That is so... Sorry. That is so painfully true. So painfully true. It doesn't help the hurt that you run into in the future, but it doesn't stop you from hurting, but it does make you realize I've done it before and I can do it again. That's the main key thing. It's always about I've done it before. Last time something like this happened, it wasn't as bad as this. And that time I got up. That time I was able to get up on my feet and walk. So yes, so massively true. And it's so funny because when I first read this line, I was like, what is he getting to here? But then it made sense after I read it like again and I read the next line. I'm like, oh yeah, bingo. I get, I smell what you're stepping in. I get where you're going with this. I'm now on the same page of the same book. It's so true. That's like, I've been probably more open than I should be about my own issues facing things like dementia and family passing away. I have to, I think it's a therapy in a sense, but it's also an aspect of, I think there is an element of feeling that connection and wanting people to understand why I feel that connection so people understand what I'm going through when I'm reading through this. I think if people are along for this ride through Mushoku Tensei with me, people are going to want to know why this hurts so much, why this connects with me, and yes, additionally, why this doesn't connect with me. And so, yes, while I can say for dang sure there's probably people that have dealt with way worse things than I have, like I mentioned before, I think I don't know what would be worse, cancer or what I've dealt with it's just dementia. I know a lot of people that are very close to me that have cancer, but they thankfully have been able to fight it off for the time being. But every time I run into a problem, every time I face a difficulty, yes, it's sad, but sometimes those memories will pop in the back of my head. I dealt with this. I watched somebody breathe their last breath while they were not all there. And I couldn't connect with them that one last time. I couldn't say goodbye because I didn't even know if he understood what I was saying. But knowing those painful memories is what makes everything else seem so easy. And it sucks because sometimes it makes you feel like you're not empathetic enough to those around you that might be hurting. Like you don't hurt as much as they do about the same situation because you've dealt with it. It's hardened you a lot. But I think it's important mentally for you, in the end of the day, when everybody goes home, that you are in a better place because you understand I'm strong and I can deal with this. I've faced this before. So again, weird set of lines, but when it finally made sense to me when I'm reading, it just, yes, truth, absolute truth. Right now, it was a time to look forward in the future. So he left it at that and lifted his glass. Cheers, everyone. Everyone cheered except for Norn, who was still staring at him wide-eyed. Poor Norn's like, what are we doing here? She quietly raised her glass while Aisha smirked more widely than before. Aisha had obviously figured out the whole thing. Not quite yet. You'll find out that not quite yet. She didn't figure out everything. In any case, he wasn't sure how well the toast had gone. I got some water on my eye. Gotta get rid of that. His goal was to be cheerful, but ended up sounding a little emotional. That wasn't good. He needed everyone smiling. That is actually really good. Like, he is... God, it's just like, it's so simple, but at the same time, I love it. Rudius is such a freaking dad right here. He's such a dad. He's like, I want everybody to be happy. This is one of those selfless moments. Like, he wants so much for everybody in this room to be happy. He wants them to all be happy. That's in his mind. It's not, thankfully, for once, what am I going to do with Roxy tonight? I almost said Aisha. No, what am I going to do with Roxy tonight? Again, Aisha might grab him for the night. He's thinking about everyone around him. It is like one of those very rare moments of selflessness that just pops up from Rudius. He's not thinking of himself. Sylphie. Oh, right. Simply calling her name, it was like they were on the same wavelength. That felt kind of nice. She emerged with 2 large boxes, beautifully wrapped. She handed one to Roxy before the 2 of them walked to Aisha and Norn. I like that aspect of not... It's a simple thing, but not just Sylphie walking up there and going, here you guys go. She wanted to get Roxy involved. She went out of her way to say, here, Roxy, here's this one. You go over there, I'll go over here. It's basically setting up this aspect of the wives. They want to go up there and offer these gifts to the children together. This is the 2 of them. And yes, technically Roxy was involved with the buying of the present, so it's kind of a kind offer to have her get involved too. But she doesn't hand it to Rudius. She hands it to Roxy. She wants to get Roxy involved. Happy 10th birthday, Norn and Aisha. Happy birthday. They both didn't seem to understand. Not even Aisha, who spoke up. There it is right there, like, wait, I thought I had this figured out. There was the curveball for Aisha. But we're 11 already, you know? This was probably the first time he had seen that clever girl bewildered. She probably figured out the general plan, but not this. It was exactly the expression he was hoping to see. He's like, I got you, girl. I got you, girl. You got you. It's like of all the aspects of this party, it's like that was the big win for Rudius. He's like, got her. Got her. Yeah, we couldn't be there for your actual 10th birthday, right? I know it's a little late to celebrate now, but Rudy said a year or so wouldn't be a big deal. He did? Tearing up a little bit, Aisha grabbed the box tightly in her arms. After a moment, she looked to Lilia, who smiled and nodded gently. A big, happy grin spread across her face as she turned back to Sylphie. Can we open these now? Of course you can. So cute. So cute. That is actually an interesting thing there. I think there is a shock value to the idea that it's been an entire year since her 10th birthday. At that point, you're probably assuming, well, we ain't celebrating. You're supposed to celebrate on the day. But I do wonder if there's an actual cultural thing here. This idea of, yeah, if you missed it, it's done. Like, it has to be on that day. But again, I think it's probably more an aspect of just assuming that it's not going to happen. Like, so much crap happened. Of course we're not going to be celebrating that. We can't. We were traveling, whatnot. Aisha moved quickly, while Norn looked to Rudius a bit stunned before following suit. While vigorously at first, they both stopped, reconsidered, and then took things more slowly, untying ribbons and opening the paper carefully not to rip it. It was a little eerie how in sync they were. They didn't look much alike, but sometimes you could really tell they were sisters. Like that, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. Okay. They're both doing the same thing, just slowly fold the paper. It's cute. But I think that's probably one of those, in most societies, modern day societies, of course, we have that privilege of having just, in some cases for some families, for some years, 5 presents or something like that. So it's like each individual one, you're just ripping through it. You're just shredding through it. There is a fun aspect of that when you were younger of just shredding paper all over the place. You're making a mess in the room and nobody's yelling at you. There's like a freedom that comes from that. But yeah, there's some cases where you get a gift from somebody or you lose somebody or it's a very special occasion. I know there's a lot of cases with like marriage and stuff like that. A lot of people find that to be a lot more special of occasion. That moment where you don't want to keep everything. You want to keep all of it because it's all special. Somebody did something very special for you. And that could be definitely the case here. It's only in multiplications of 5. Those are their birthday days. That's not every single year like we have. Oh, it's a new pair of boots. What did you get, Norn? Look, Aisha, I got a coat. They compared their presents gleefully. It was good to see that they did a decent job picking gifts. My goodness, you both got very nice gifts, didn't you? Lilia approached them with a smile, Zenith at her side. I'm remembering this part. No. Oh, crap. This hurt so bad. This hurt so bad. There's a very personal connection that I have with this one. And then it follows up with another gut punch right after it, too. Lilia walked up with Zenith at her side. I'm not going to be able to get through this. I'm totally not going to be able to get through this. Oh, Mom, look at this. Norn spread out her coat, showing Zenith, grinning from ear to ear. Zenith didn't react in any obvious way. That made Rudius feel a little down, despite himself. Zenith had always been the type to get all worked up about these things. He remembered how enthusiastic she had been on his 5th birthday. How she proudly presented him with her gift of a carefully selected book. I said, like, every sentence. If not for her condition, she'd probably be yelping with excitement for her daughter right now. Seeing her so expressionless made him sad. It does really suck thinking about how somebody would react differently when they are not all there. That idea of, like, normally this would be something they'd be super excited about. That was, like, at some point in my own father's issues, there came a time where I was just wanted to do something with him. And presenting him with something that we normally do, and he just had no care. Like, it's just like, I know he was probably struggling. Like, there's a side of me that thinks that somewhere inside there he's trying to figure it out. But anyways. Of course, if she recovered and learned of Paul's death, there was no guarantee that she'd smile again like she used to. Still, it was painful to see her like this. Not sad, not happy, just emotionless. Yeah, there's times where you're just like, I'd rather have them sad. I'd rather have them not happy. I'd rather see them angry. Something besides emotionless. But just as that thought crossed his mind, if I can read it, Zenith smiled. Oh my gosh. That wrecked me. That absolutely wrecked me when I read that. Again, a bad personal connection. Not a bad, it's a good moment. It just hurts. It's what I've been waiting for a long time too, and it finally, I've been asking Refugio for this for a long time, and he finally gives it to me. The expression quickly vanished. One sentence at a time. It had only been there for an instant. Were his eyes playing tricks on him? Were his eyes playing tricks on him? Did she just smile? No, they had all seen it. Lilia, Aisha, Sylphie, and Roxy were all looking at Zenith with surprise. Oh, this sucks. I knew this was going to be a really hard one to read through. I probably look like crap, don't I? Norn, who the smile was directed at, spoke up. Mom? She was about ready to break down in tears. Zenith reached down and stroked her on the head. Then did the same to Aisha. Her movements were even more gentle than usual. She was happy. She was happy to see her girls growing up. Lilia spoke up softly. Oh, madam, I'm so glad. Lilia wrapped her arms around Zenith's shoulders. Her face was as emotional as he had ever seen before. Lilia loves her so much. She says madam, and she treats her like her master, but she loves her. Whew, this chapter sucks. This chapter sucks. Like half Mushoku Mondays this week's gonna be me just reading this one segment. I can just see this just absolutely breaking Norm, and I'm so glad for Norm. Just a reminder that mom's there. Again, that's that massive relief that it's now in my preview, so I have to see it all the time. Everything you've done up to that point had meaning. Like there was somebody in there. Like they were still in there. With her usual blank expression, Zenith reached up and stroked her hand. Lilia had to bite her lip and keep from crying. Lilia had to bite her lip to keep from crying. She just can't show it. It's like, you can't show it, just show it. Again, Lilia, I feel like, needs to let it out. It's important. After Lilia brought Zenith back to her seat, Lilia offered Norn and Aisha another present. This freaking hurts too. This is for the two of you, from myself and Miss Zenith. It was a beautifully set. It was a set of beautifully embroidered handkerchiefs. My mom did something very special for us. My dad was passing away. We had one last Christmas. It was actually, he passed away before Christmas. But she bought some pocket watches for us and had my father pray over them and hold them. And it was just her way of kind of showing that he was still part of the family and giving gifts. So when I read this part, I immediately thought of that. I need a break. I need a break. All right. Let's continue. Norn spoke up. Thank you very much, Miss Lilia. It's beautiful. Aisha hesitated, probably due to her getting the same present as her sister. Again, another one of those moments of like, Rudius, don't always think the worst. It's probably had nothing to do with it. My mind at this point was immediately going to the idea of accepting a present. This is not normal for her. Mom, are you sure I can have one too? Yes, I'm quite sure. You're Paul's daughter too, you know. Thank you. Thank you, Lilia. She's changing. Lilia's finally changing. My gosh, massive, massive shift here. I love it. I love it. Finally, they're becoming family. Stop with this crap. Become family. And this is, again, it was a sign of that with like everything sort of slowly changing how Lilia responded to Aisha just having fun and being goofy and whatnot. Rudius thought this seemed like a change. He remembered Lilia spending years drumming into her head that she was only a maid. Of course, I still expect you to show Madame Norn and Master Rudius the respect that they deserve. Understood? Okay, Mom. She was still Lilia after all. Like we just like creep that door a little open, but then we're like, but you remember it's not quite that far. Ring it back a little bit. Pull it back a little bit. Despite what Lilia was saying, he hadn't seen her badgering Aisha much lately. Not even about her tone of speech. He assumed that she was thinking things over a little herself over the last few months. Which, yes, again, was that indication where, yes, they were mentioning the idea that Lilia was sitting there looking out the window, looking sad and whatever. I think at some point she's realized, she's finally kind of in her own way. I've criticized the idea of, not really criticized, but I've talked about the idea of how Lilia doesn't express herself. She hasn't expressed her pain. She hasn't even talked about the loss of Paul. She hasn't even talked about the fact of where Zenith's at right now. She does not vocalize anything, and that's probably due to with the aspect that she's been a maid for so long. This has been her duty, and she's never really been able to, she's always been professional and not expressing her own thoughts. She's got in the same situation that Sylphie has been in for a long time for me. This idea of not expressing what you really do feel, not vocalizing your thoughts. But I think over this long period of time, she has been thinking this over in her own way. This is her way of coping, and this is her way of dealing with this whole situation, is her just trying to think it out herself. Keeping it all to herself, bottling it up, and trying to organize it in a way that's comfortable. And I think she has come to that conclusion. Let Aisha be who she is. And there is an element of letting Aisha be the maid that she is now. She's not under the guide of Lilia anymore. She is now working for Rudius. Let her do it the way that she wants to do it. But I think she still is controlling there. But I think she has come to realize that, yeah, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that mindset that I've had the longest time is wrong. Maybe what Aisha's doing is fine. It's right. So it's a victory no matter how you look at it. They're finally becoming a family. After Lilia returned to her seat, Zenith reached over and placed her hand on her shoulder. Madam? Lilia squeezed her hand, softly speaking. Thank you. It was almost as if they were having a wordless conversation. Again, that's that whole sister-wife thing, like the connecting wives thing of like, it's mothers. It's mothers connecting, really. It's that idea of like, go. Be a mom to her. Good job. You did it. You can be her mom. We can be a family. Rudius noticed Roxy seemed particularly moved by that. As he was studying her face, Sylphie tugged at his sleeve. She was carrying a third box. That's right. He couldn't forget the next part. Roxy? Roxy turned, blinking in surprise as Sylphie stood next to her with a box. Yes? Sylvie spoke up before Rudius could. This one is from us to you, Roxy. Why? For what? It's a wedding present. Congratulations. She handed the box over to Roxy before she could object. She's like, here you go. I don't want to hear anything. Go on, open it. Doing as she was told, Roxy opened it up and retrieved the hat from inside. Her eyes went wide as saucers. Sylvie? Rudy? Is this? Welcome to the family, Roxy. Let's try our best to be like Zenith and Lilia, okay? The smile on Sylvie's face was angelic as she delivered that line. Roxy bit her lip, looking down slightly, squeezing the hat to her chest. After a moment, she managed to squeak out the words. Thank you, Sylvie. Tears were glimmering in her eyes. This is so cute. Rudius wouldn't hear about this for some time, but according to Roxy, this was the moment that she felt that Sylvie had truly accepted her into their lives. That's a very, very interesting thought there. Or again, technically a statement, because he's saying that he found out later on, maybe Roxy tells him at some point, this is the point which I finally felt like I was a part of this family. Like, it's curious to me because there have been so many points throughout the last few chapters, at least, that feels like there's an acceptance. Again, that's that whole aspect of, I keep chiming on this, and I'm sorry, not knowing what Sylvie really thinks because she doesn't speak her mind that much. And granted, Sylvie could have always accepted Roxy, but that's not what Roxy feels. There's a difference between what somebody actually states and what the second party actually feels. Sylvie, from that first night, said, yes, welcome, Roxy. You're part of the family. But did Roxy actually feel like she was welcome? Did she feel like, yeah, this is a good thing. We're working this out. And that's what I was saying, that whole situation with the previous chapters and the idea of, yes, Rudius having his threesome. This idea that was like, while, yes, a dream of the man, it was really an aspect of them being comfortable enough to do that is pretty big. That's not something I can see that most people are very comfortable with. But then here, again, despite that, despite the whole shopping trip where it felt like the two of them were just kind of finding something for Aisha and Nora and they're having fun, they're figuring things out, and they're giving pointers from what they experience, and they're figuring things out for themselves. Still, Roxy wasn't feeling like she was a part of the family. Odd. It's not until here, which I think a big part of that, and kudos to Sylvie, I think a big part of that is that Sylvie came up with the gift. Sylvie cut in line. Rudius is going to say something like, oh yeah, we have a present for you. No, Sylvie's like, we got something for you, Roxy. Here, take it. It's from Sylvie, which is a very curious thing, because this is a gift for Rudius and Roxy getting married. But no, Sylvie is giving it to Roxy. I think there is a symbolic aspect there in the idea that it is Sylvie bringing Roxy in the family, basically marrying Roxy. You are a wife now. You are a wife of this family. Not Rudius giving the gift to Roxy and saying, you are now my wife, the second one. This is an acceptance between the two of them. And I think, again, that's probably because of what was happening with Zenith and Lilia in the room at that moment. They have always looked up to the Grey Rat family as being the perfect marriage. Roxy felt that Paul and Zenith were the perfect marriage. This was our ideal family because she just couldn't communicate to her parents. Here, two people speak my language and they speak it all the time. Rather than back at home, my parents would talk to me in the tongue that I know, but then they would speak to each other in each other's mind. She couldn't grasp what they were actually talking to each other. She couldn't grasp if they were being doki doki with it. If Roxy's parents were being all mushy, they'd be speaking in their minds. They wouldn't vocalize it. So she never got that sense of what a couple would be. She wasn't until she became the tutor of Rudius that she finally seen like a normal family. And that became like her ideal. And equally so for Sylvie. She thought they were the perfect parents. And she was even there after Zenith became a part of the family. And so she's seen that dynamic as well. These two have the perfect example in front of them of these two wives. And as Roxy's staring at them, and they obviously love each other, Sylvie walks up and welcomes her in and says, let's be like them. It's the perfect layout. It's the perfect way to show that Roxy is welcome. And that's why I think in the end, This is the point where Roxy truly felt like Sylphie had welcomed her. Because everything before then wasn't enough. Sylphie could have been accepting of Roxy the whole time, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to show her. It was everything culminating in that one moment that either made her realize it, or she finally actually felt that Sylphie was accepting her. It is a very... I almost wish that under that line was, and yes, that was the point in which Sylphie technically fully accepted her. Or, but no, Sylphie was always accepting of her. It doesn't actually make it completely clear, and that's perfectly fine. I love making my own conclusions here. It is sort of the negative effect of how unexpressive Sylphie is that Roxy probably never felt fully welcomed. She didn't know what Sylphie was thinking. I'm really wondering if I'm only going to get one chapter done today. With the main event behind them, the rest of the party went off smoothly. Lilia carried out a big cake. It was a fluffy sponge cake type of thing, although no cream was involved. Instead, some dried fruit was inside, and a slightly bitter batter. But the sweetness of the fruits balanced it out beautifully. He remembered eating cakes like this back in the Kingdom of Asura. They were also made for his 5th birthday, and one was served to him at his 10th birthday. It brought back memories. He wondered how Eris was doing these days. Wherever she was, he assumed that she was merrily chopping her way through life. Maybe she had gotten married like him. Nope. No. Probably not. There wasn't a man in the world who could handle that girl. Again, that was like the whole thing in her entire chapter was that this is it. Rudius is the only one that can stand me. If I don't get with him, I'm done. According to Lilia, the cake was a traditional Asuran treat. Paul hated the taste though, so they almost never made one. It was a little amusing to hear the man was a picky eater at his age, but that did seem in character. Sylphie had helped out with the cake and was confident that she could make one herself. Norn liked it, and Rudius liked it as well. Aisha, however, wasn't a fan. He could see her picking around the chunks of fruit as she ate, which led to Lilia scolding her a little. But then Lilia murmured, "That reminds me of Master Paul," with a smile on her face. That's so cute. I'm glad it's Aisha, not Norn. It's cute to see the connections between Aisha and Paul. She got that part from Paul. After a while, Aisha started cuddling up to Rudius, begging him to eat the rest of hers. But he handed off the job to Roxy, who had a sweet tooth. He was hoping that they'd end up feeding each other bites. But unfortunately, Roxy took her assignment more seriously. Roxy gets serious. I have to do it every time. She might have misunderstood what he was looking for. "Listen carefully, Aisha. You are a very fortunate girl, so it might be hard for you to understand this, but sometimes, when you're truly desperate, you might end up eating anything you can. Even a poisonous scorpion." Ugh. Right. Aisha found herself on the receiving end of a lecture. Professor Roxy steps up. Rudius had gotten a similar talk from Ghislaine at some point. Yeah, she eating feces. Maybe it was just something adventurers felt really strongly about. It is kind of curious that Rudius never really kind of faced issues like that, or at least he didn't write about it. Those moments where, yeah, you're traveling, but again, he had Reserved with him all the time, and if they ever needed food, yeah, they're going to be eating nasty monster meat, but at least not poisonous scorpions or something, or feces. Rudius put up with some lousy food during his journey across the Demon Continent, but he was sure he'd never resorted to eating poisonous monsters. Maybe he was fortunate too. "This cake, on the other hand, is sweet and delicious. It would be wrong to leave it unfinished. Eat it, please." "Okay." Her tone wasn't too harsh, but her arguments were intense enough that Aisha looked a little bit freaked out for once. She went back to eating her cake in silence. There's like, this is like a mixed moment here. It's like, oh crap, this is gonna make Aisha not like Roxy. But again, like I said earlier, sometimes having somebody in the house that is willing to lecture and control somebody does create a bit of comfort. It is comforting to know that somebody in the family is in charge. Somebody has control of the situation. Because, yes, you're not going to like it here, and you're probably in your mind going, "I hate Roxy. She always says things like this." Later on, when you're feeling doubt, it's the first person you're wanting to go to. In most cases. I mean, different for everybody, but that's my feeling. There's problem solvers and there's comforters, I guess is the way to put it. And yes, you could do both. It felt like to Rudius that this is the first time that Aisha did what she was told. Well, no, that's not fair. She did listen to him, for the most part. Thinking about it, it was good to get past the picky eater thing. Maybe he mishandled the situation. It was nice to have someone around to set things straight. Well done, Shisho. I'm gonna start saying Shisho instead of teacher now. I hate teacher. It just sounds weird. I don't know why, it just sounds weird. "I'm so full, I can't take another bite." Aisha's reply came too quickly. "Were you even listening to me? Eat your cake." Maybe this was a good thing. Sylphie and Rudius hadn't been scolding Aisha often, and he felt that Lilia was taking it easy on her because of that. Aisha was a very clever girl, but she was only 11. She probably needed someone to lecture her from time to time. That is kind of an interesting thing. Like, now that Lilia is kind of chilling out, now Roxy's stepping up. But I don't think Roxy's anywhere as bad, at least with this situation, anywhere as bad as Lilia. Because again, with Lilia, she was correcting her in a way to say, you are less than those around you. That's the problem. Roxy is lecturing her in the idea of, I have dealt with situations where I had to eat poisonous scorpions. You should be so fortunate. This is a different situation. It's comparing her situation with what Roxy's been through, experience. While again, Lilia was talking down to Aisha, talking her down. It's a massive difference there. In any case, Roxy seemed to be getting friendlier with his sisters. The two of them weren't fighting each other anymore. They just got proof that Zenith's condition was improving. He really felt like his family had grown closer in general. In other words, the celebration was a success. And he enjoyed every single minute of it. He made a mental note to throw even more elaborate parties when they turned 15. In Legend of the University number 5, the boss is merciful to fish. It was just a boot. No, he chose not to freeze the lake. He chose not to hook any fish because he's being merciful. There it is. But no. This chapter was so good. Easily, by far, no doubt, the best chapter of Volume 13. And we'll see with the remaining chapters. I don't think that any are going to come close to this, but woof. Wrecked me so bad. Just seeing Zenith is improving, which is a massive emotional thing for me. Not just for me, it's like emotional for me because I see that it has value to the other characters. There's a personal connection to it, but I see value to the other characters around, especially Norn. Again, Norn having this uneasiness about her as Zenith is feeding her. So now she can finally see Mom is getting better. Seeing Aisha is getting a little bit more freedom to be what she is. Lilia's opening up to the family more. The connection between Zenith and Lilia being on display again. How that connects to Roxy and Sylphie. Rudius, once again, thankfully, being a side character. I always love these moments between the characters, and Rudius just being a side character. He doesn't always have to be the center of tension like so many other stories. Just so much. This chapter is so freaking good. And I made it through it. I don't think there's really anything in chapter 10 that's super emotional, but I don't know. Sometimes it changes when I actually read it. But gosh, we could do chapter 10. We're doing chapter 10. I figured this recording might end up being longer than usual, but it's fine. I did condense quite a bit of 10 too. Chapter 10, Workplace Drama. Winter was on the way to the kingdom of Renoa. While Rudius's family was well off compared to others, he still made sure to make a stockpile of wood in the basement and outside. They were prepared, and all they had to do now was wait out the snow, passing time enjoying his time with his wives. But as he was ready to hibernate, a certain someone from his past came back to haunt him. Is it Orsted? It's like, yeah, this is one of those moments where I sit down, okay, who would haunt him? Edis? Maybe. I mean, in a passing comment, he could say that. But again, we're sort of establishing right now that he's kind of realizing through Rejerd that he made a mistake. He may have made a mistake. So maybe Edis? Orsted, there's going to be probably Turning Point 4 in the title. If it's Orsted, that would be Chapter 10, Turning Point 4. And then the last one I could think of would be Sarah. So it's like those three would be probably the options there. I can't really think of anybody else. And so I think with the fact that we have Suzanne coming back in this chapter, I kind of assume it would be Sarah. One morning, while eating breakfast, Roxy offered Rudius a surprising proposal. Rudy, Sylphie and I are going out on a job tomorrow. We might be away for several days. I was wondering if you'd like to come along. To watch you do your thing? Giving a quizzical look, Roxy responded. No, we'd all be doing a job. There might be a bonus in it for us if we perform well. Rudius just wanted to cheer her on from the sideline, but that wasn't the idea here. What kind of job? Well, it seems like a member of the Renoan family is currently on a pilgrimage. It was apparently a local tradition. When a Renoan royal approached the age of maturity, it says majority. I would think it'd be an age of maturity, but I don't know. Maybe there is an age of majority. I've never heard of the term age of majority. Let me see if Google knows of age of majority. Yeah, there is an age of majority. Okay, I'm wrong. They call it a coming of age later on, so that's what threw me off. It's typically called a coming of age. You get by this time, 7 Seas. I'm not going to criticize you this time. The royal was required to make a journey around the country as a sort of training exercise. It wasn't too strenuous. They just spent 6 months or so visiting different places in the country. Since they weren't permitted guards, they had to make all the arrangements themselves. Hire their own people, find a way around, and see the country for their own eyes. Theoretically, this is a way to grow into better rulers. It was known as the coming of age pilgrimage. There it is. It's always coming of age. Which again makes sense. I mean, yeah, granted, they're going to make this out as like, holy crap, they're just in the best ends possible and everything. So it's like they are still making it well, but it is a way to get them out of the, in my opinion, if how I see the royalty being in this area, it's a way to get them out of the palace, show them the countryside, show them who you're ruling over. And that could be a good sign of how at least this kingdom does so much better than other kingdoms. Like what we kind of experienced with Ariel and her time in the palace. They were just eating, being gluttonous, and enjoying their time. They weren't going out and seeing the troubles of the people. This is a good way for them to see it for their own eyes. A lot of these towns and stuff are probably going to make things all nice and pretty when they come by because they want to make sure that they don't, you know, look down upon them or anything like that, or see them as a failure town or whatever. But still, local mayors and governors were always expecting this, keeping tabs on the age of the royal prince and princesses, making sure to anticipate their timing. It sounded creepy, but it was obvious that they didn't want the member of the royal family getting injured in their territory. Yeah, that's a key thing. While they could surround them with guards, they weren't permitted to. However, when the royal members requested guards, they were allowed to provide them. This time, a party of adventurers had been hired as an escort. But their mage and healer fell ill. They would recover, but they had to continue their trip, otherwise they'd be trapped there for winter. So, the royal family requested bodyguards from the city. The mayor held a conference with the leaders of the Magic Guild and the university in order to choose the most suitable candidates for the job. One such candidate stood out from the head of the list. A well-traveled former adventurer, practiced skills in offensive magic, brand new member of the university's faculty, with few responsibilities to be reassigned. In other words, Roxy. It's like, here's all this list of great things, and also, she's not really doing much right now because she's a substitute, like she's a sit-in professor. Wait, on second thought, how did Sylphie end up on this job too? Well, Princess Ariel's coming along too. She was eager to establish connections with a member of the royal family. Ariel had excellent information network. She must have heard about the situation and marked it as an opportunity. Slip in there, slide in that Renoan princess's DMs. So I heard you coming by. She always took what she can get. Ah, okay, so basically you two are guarding both Ariel and this kid? That's right. Oh, and Luke's helping too. He wasn't sure if Luke could be counted, but decided not to say so. It's like, oh, Luke, okay, who else? So he's gonna be carrying your bags? Who else do you have helping? Hey, Luke didn't do too well in that duel, let's be honest. But again, I think compared to most, he's above average, probably. Compared to literally everybody that's carried a sword, he's above average. Let me correct that. I think it should be alright, since Sylphie's coming along, but we need to guard two very important people, and the shrine we're visiting is deep inside a forest. Also, I've been known to make some silly mistakes at the worst time. I suppose I'm a little anxious. That's sad, but I do appreciate the fact that she's honest about that. Like, yeah, I could make a mistake, and she made a big blunder before, and that's something that she's not going to shake off very quickly. So that's mainly the main point. I think you're really underestimating yourself, Roxy. Well, maybe so, but I had a talk with Sylphie about how we could ensure this job went off smoothly, and she suggested that we ask for your help. You're the single most powerful mage in the city at the moment, after all. Rudius thought, putting aside the worthiness of that title that I have, he understood Roxy's nervousness. Protecting two very important people with a fairly small group, it was hard to expect a band of adventurers could be much use, especially being down two of their members. Which, yes, I could probably see this idea of the uncertainty and unknown of that group. They don't know how good they are. But additionally, fully acknowledging that losing two members of their party off-balances them. A lot of what we've kind of seen with conversations and examination of other groups has always been how balanced they are. If they lose somebody, they fall off balance because their formation's broken. That meant the only person Roxy could really rely on was Sylphie. But now that he thought about it, Roxy hadn't seen Sylphie in combat. That's a very curious thing. I'd imagine she'd probably seen her doing something, maybe in training exercises at the university, but actual combat's a different thing, I guess. So yeah, he felt that Roxy might have uncertainty there as well. Is it okay for the three of us to leave the house, though? What about Lucy? Sylphie spoke up. She'll be fine. We have Suzanne, and I'm sure Lilia will take good care of her. It was true that he wouldn't be much use here, without them around. Lilia and Aisha would be stepping up either way. Let's be honest, you'd spend the whole time there cooing over Lucy. You wouldn't be doing much. It was important to get Sylphie back to Lucy as soon as possible, so it was best that we'd help with the job. With that, he agreed. Everything aside, it would boost Roxy's rep if they pulled it off. Maybe even move her up on the career ladder. The next day, Roxy and Rudius made their way to an inn catered to S-rank adventurers. Again, nice and classy. Nice and classy. Don't put them in like a barn or something. It was a very nice place, nicer than the one that he took Sylphie and Roxy before. With that, yes, this pilgrimage seemed like it was more on the luxurious side. Not that he expect anything less from royalty. Really? They have gardens on the inside of the palace walls of Asura too? Oh yes, so you have them in Renault as well then? We do. It sounds like they're rather similar, really. How very interesting. Arriving, Ariel and her party was heaving tea. Arriving, Ariel and her party were heaving teas at the Renoans. That is the greatest typo ever. Yes, we have those gardens as well. Anyways, arriving, Ariel and her party were having tea with the Renoans. A girl, maybe 12 years old, was sitting across from Ariel. Since it was supposed to be a coming of age, she was presumably 15, but she definitely looked younger. Sylphie stood behind them, looking poised and intimidating in her work clothes. Luke was there, as well as an older female knight, presumably the Renoan princess's guard. Who are you people? State your names at once. The female guard instantly stepped between Rudius and the princess, her gaze challenging, but not openly hostile. Roxy and Rudius introduced themselves before the guard introduced herself as Grace. She was a royal knight and appreciative of their assistance, though she examined Roxy dubiously, before stepping back without comment. Rudius assumed that she wanted to make comments about the university sending someone so young. While he appreciated her keeping her thoughts to herself, he wasn't sure why she did. Maybe because she was just a surprisingly tactful person. Nope. He figured based on Ariel's creepy little smile that she probably gave a warning beforehand. Which was good. If the woman burst out in laughter and called Roxy a child, he might have exploded on the spot. Or caused an explosion. Yeah, I can see that. That would end Roxy's career prospects. Sorry, Roxy, we gotta let you go. Why? What did I do? Your husband killed 2 princesses. That explosion at that inn. Why do you think we're letting you off? Anyways. When inquiring on the party of adventurers, they were told they were still preparing, so they had some time to wait. Before Rudius could take a seat, he noticed Roxy joined Sylphie, and the knight went back to her former position. It seemed the princesses were the only ones permitted to sit, so he would have to stand on his feet. Yeah, that was funny, because it talks about the fact that, like, okay, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer, and there's, like, the 2 princes sitting there across from each other, and everybody else is standing, and then Rudius is like, okay, cool, so I'm going to sit next to Ariel. Oh, never mind, I guess we're standing. By the way, Princess Ariel, how long have you been staying in our kingdom? Well, let me see. Not counting my journey, it's been a little less than 6 years. This country is essentially a second home to me by now. Oh, does that mean you'll be graduating next year then? What a shame. I only just got to know you, and you'll be leaving so soon. I suppose so, yes. But as long as our countries stay in contact, I'm sure we'll meet again. It's so funny because I read that. I accidentally read that before as long as our countries stay in conflict, I'm sure we'll meet again. It's like, yeah, we'll meet each other on the battlefield. Rudius found the Renoan princess a cutie. He did remember hearing how the royal family was full of beautiful people. She was almost a match for Ariel. Not quite, but almost. Ariel worked fast, though. It was as if they were already buddies. Waiting idly for a while, Rudius let the princess conversation wash over him without really listening. Then, voices at the entrance snapped him back to reality. Here it comes. Here it comes. Are you serious? Did you forget what happened last time? Those morons screwed up so badly, they nearly got Tina and Melanie killed. I'm not okay with this. What do you want me to do? We're not calling the shots here. That's not good enough. Are you really okay with this? Do you really trust some random stranger with your back out there? It's not like I want to, okay? A group of 4 women stomped into the room. The first 2 are around 30, wearing swords, probably frontliners. One muscular woman reminded him of Ghislaine, more solidly built though, as if her body was chiseled out of rock. The second wore dark brown hair swept back, revealing a cross scar on her forehead. She seemed agile and alert, and her sunken eyes suggest that she had her share of battles. Looks could be deceiving, but they seemed like a pair of wily, skillful veterans. It made sense that they were chosen to guard the princess. Incidentally, the argument was being done by the 2 following them. I know, right? I would rather do this myself rather than people I can't trust. The angry one was a girl, maybe 15, sullen look on her face. While she looked like a fledgling, if she was in this party, she had to be good. Carrying a staff, she must be a healer, mage, or maybe both. Look, you can't be the only one in the back line. I don't want to let anything get past me, but it's going to happen sometimes. Then there was the 4th member. This was the line. This was literally the line that got me so good. But more importantly, you gotta learn how to work with anyone if you want people to respect you. Adventurers don't get the luxury of staying in the same party forever, you know? Wait, Suzanne, does that mean you're disbanding the party? I heard that immediately. Yeah, that was totally a Suzanne line from way back there in volume 7. I love it. I love the callback. She's grown up, carrying a bow, not typical for an adventurer. as it didn't match sword or spells. After Rudius' many years traveling, he only met one dedicated bow user. The only one in that entire region. He recognized her immediately. The moment she had seen Rudius, she stopped in her tracks and stared wide-eyed. "Oh, it's you," she muttered to herself more than Rudius. She's like, "Oh crap, here we go. I gotta deal with this now." I wasn't really expecting to deal with this right now. Sarah, do you know the guy? Well, yeah. It was Sarah, the adventurer he nearly slept with some time ago. I like it. That's what he thinks about when he recognizes her. Oh crap, it's the girl I nearly slept with. Like, not the girl that I spent an entire year adventuring with, killing drakes and everything. No, I nearly slept with her. That's the only thing that pops in his mind. That's the trauma that has been burned right there. Everything else is like, yeah, it was another day of killing dragons. But no, that was like the most unique thing that burned in there. That trauma that burned in there. I understand why. He hadn't forgotten Sarah. He wasn't sure if he ever could if he tried. Strong-willed, combative girl with a sharp tongue, but with a good head on her shoulders. It took some time, but she ended up falling for him. He was fairly sure, at least. It was hard to say how he felt about her. Things escalated before he could figure it out. After getting drunk, bad-mouthing her in public, she dumped him on the spot. Rudius was confident it was a traumatic experience for both of them. Still, it had been some time. They went their separate ways. I do like that acknowledgement, this idea of, yeah, that was... It's easy to forget that, but that was literally Rudius' state of mind back in Volume 7. His state of mind was, okay, things happened with Edis, things fell apart, and now it feels like Sarah likes me, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to assume that she likes me and it fall apart just like with Edis. I assumed Edis liked me, and then she abandoned me. That blew up in my face. He didn't want to do that again with Sarah, so he set his expectations. Maybe she doesn't. Let's try this out. But he constantly acknowledged the fact that I don't know if I love her. Yeah, she's cute and everything, but he didn't know if he loved her. And I like that even in this chapter, it still stays consistent. He didn't know if he loved her. He didn't get a chance to figure that out. He wanted to figure that out. He's like, yeah, sure, let's try to figure this out. He didn't have the time to. It fell apart. After getting drunk, bad-mouthing her in public, she dumped him on the spot. Rudius was confident that it was a traumatic experience for both of them. Love that. It's a simple phrase, simple thought process, but I love that. He fully acknowledges that both of them were affected by this. And he's admitted this before. He does fully acknowledge that he pretty much wronged her. And I think that's partially due to the fact that this sequence of events were separate. This whole thing with her in bed with him and walking away and say it was a travesty, it was a failure, and then later on, him saying something really terrible to her. Still, it had been some time. They went their separate ways, lived their own lives for many years now. He told himself that it was in the past, and that they would never see each other again. But fate had different plans. Refugin had different plans. Or the man god, I don't know. It was all part of the man god's plan, or Elnalise. He was now working a job with his ex-girlfriend, but hopefully they were both professionals. They could just focus on the task at hand. Dredging up the past wasn't going to do them any good now. I did notice in this section of the chapter, Rudius, this is honestly something that I haven't really experienced with the writing around Rudius' inner thoughts for a while. This idea that it just almost feels like he's just repeating himself in his mind. No, this is not like the previous chapters where I got frustrated with the fact that Rudius kept thinking about Roxy and Sylphie in bed together. No, this is that aspect of him in his head, in a circle about the situation and how he should address it, and the fact that he doesn't want to address it. He knows that she's angry at him. He doesn't think it's going to do any good. He's going to ruin the mood. He's just in his head spinning around. And again, that's partly due to the fact that in this situation right here, at least we'll be getting into in a minute, he's cooking food and Sarah's staring at him and he could do nothing but think about it. Like, it's not like he can think about anything else in this situation because he's stuck there and it's not like he can leave. But I've always kind of agreed with Rudius here. This idea that you don't bring up things that are going to ruin the mood. It's like that whole situation with Paul and Rudius in the labyrinth. Okay, don't bring that up right now. It's just going to ruin the mood. Additionally, Solat talking about their rules and how they don't allow relationships inside of the party because it's going to cause issues. Anything that can affect the mood of the party itself can lead to death. It's enough to cause somebody to be distracted or get a princess killed. After slightly awkward introductions, they formed into a party and headed out to the nearby forest where a shrine was located. Nicely done, girls. That was an easy one. Looks like those rumors about the professor who made it through the teleportation labyrinth were true, huh? Sorry, I have to apologize. I really underestimated you at first. That lesson you gave me about splitting my focus between healing and offensive magic was amazing. It's such a clean, simple theory, and you actually put it into practice. Thanks to Rudius' careful efforts, they'd gotten through the job without incidents. This is one of those random comments that I'm like, why the hell is he thinking this? Like, it didn't really give an indication of how they were talking that Rudius did anything. And then later on, it talks about the fact that Rudius is like, him and Sylphie are both kind of just on the sidelines with nothing to do because Roxy's handling everything along with the Amazons. It just seemed like a really random, like, thanks to my works, everything went smoothly. Actually, no, I didn't do anything. Maybe it was more the fact that he didn't do anything, which was a careful move by him. The Amazons, an all-female S-rank party, were openly dubious of Roxy at first. The brat of the party even declared, I don't want to work with a kid. However, after their first few battles, their opinion did a complete 180. Roxy casted offensive spells with impeccable timing, and healed just as efficiently. Her skills was far greater than most due to her time soloing labyrinths. It sounded as if she was doing better than the two party members they left behind. Hearing them compliment Roxy made Rudius feel warm and fuzzy. He's proud of his teacher. He had to fight the urge to puff out his chest and say, that's my shisho, you know. The only issue was that Rudius was having to dodge Sarah from time to time. She kept glaring at him as he was working on the mill, but he knew striking up a conversation would end up making it worse. Sometimes it was best to avoid your troubles entirely. I didn't think about this before, but yes, when I was reading this, I totally didn't think about this. We are going right back to volume 7. And there's so much of it in here that, aside from the fact that this is Sarah, let's put that aside. I'm not stating the obvious here. Aside from Sarah herself being a part of volume 7, we're getting so much of volume 7 Rudius in this chapter. Yes, a lot of that's because Sarah and his conversation is going to dredge up those old habits and those old memories, but there's a lot of mindset here that is not as obviously put out there that almost feels like it. Rudius in volume 7 was so much about avoiding problems, running away. That was the whole concept of how it concluded. Run away. Soldat tells him, just run away. Come with us. If you don't think you can fix it, don't give up. Just come with us. Don't give up on life itself, basically. Come with us. Run away from it. And he's doing it right here. It's best to just avoid it. Don't get involved. Just hide from that issue. Which, yes, only makes it worse. Rudius, you're finally given an opportunity to wrap up this issue that you've had for a long time. What did I do to Sarah? Is she okay? You have the opportunity right there to make sure that she's okay, and that'll give you closure as well, and he wants to run away from it. That's right. He was just doing his best to keep the mood positive. His discretion was the only reason things had gone so smoothly. This is the only reason why I can think that he's saying that earlier about because of his decisions, his careful actions has gotten them through it, because he hasn't ruined the mood. No, that wasn't exactly true. He hadn't contributed much at all to the group. The Amazons were skilled. Roxy snapped into their party perfectly. That left him and Sylphie nothing much to do. Currently, the Renoan princess was inside the building with her knight, offering some sort of formal prayer. Once she had finished, they'd return back to the city and complete the job. Everyone would go home happy, and Roxy would get a rep bump and get closer to that promotion. Still, Sarah wasn't too pleased by the situation, staring at him silently for 10 minutes straight while he cooked. Like the laser guys. Gee, I want that in the anime. I just want it to be like Rudius' face, and he's got like this pot and he's cooking it, and there's like that heat coming up in his face, and then it cuts over to Sarah and she's gee, and it cuts back over to his face and he's cooking, and it cuts back to Sarah and gee. It'd be cute, but they're not going to adapt it. They could, yeah, I guess they could adapt this. It'll probably be very quick if they do adapt it. Rudius couldn't blame her. People got a little surly when you ignored them, but dredging up the past would make it worse. Again, repeat it. It's almost as if he's trying to convince himself the whole time. He was going to ask Sylphie for help, but she was glaring at him too. Maybe she was worried that he was going to cheat again. Or maybe she was mad that he was ignoring Sarah. She wants him to fix the situation. Either way, the silence was getting pretty heavy. Finally, Sylphie whispered in his ear, suggesting he talk to her. It wasn't like he minded a normal conversation. He liked to put the past behind them. He wasn't sure if he could laugh off those memories, though. The wounds still felt raw. That's assuming that that's what you kind of want. Yes, that's technically a way to sort of resolve issues in the past. This idea of, we were dumb kids, right? We were dumb kids. But if they hurt, if those memories of the past hurt, yeah, laughing at them is sort of a way of discounting your own feelings, which in a way can affect you. Maybe he should have introduced her to Sylphie and Roxy from the get-go. Yeah, that would fix things. That would fix things. Hey, what's going on? Here's my new wives. They fixed me. But at this point, she wasn't even trying to talk to him. But again, I still understand his fears here. If I do bring it up, it could cause problems, ruin the mood, and then somebody can get hurt. is that issue with that work, it's literally the title, is that issue with the work environment drama, is it's going to affect how you work. And so it almost feels like, yeah, let's just leave it over here and get the job done. Ignoring her for this long was a mistake and only managed to piss her off. A bigger problem was that he had nothing he wanted to say to her. All the topics that came to mind were about their past together, which led to an ugly breakup. It's like you can't even shoot the breeze because the only thing that's popped into his head is, yeah, that night that we had together. Oh yeah, what I said to you on that street, I guess I should have said that. Nothing about like, hey, still doing a great job. It would lead to a lousy mood and might not be pleasant for Sylphie to hear. He felt it was best to stay silent and apologize for making things awkward when they got back to town. He'd endure some suffering for the sake of Roxy's promotion. Again, keep quiet, let things run through, then deal with it. Nearby, he can hear conversations that sound like they were going better. The mage of the party was getting the okay from Roxy to teach her more. She even got Roxy to let her call her elder sister. He wanted to be part of that conversation. He's like, I want to be over there. Can I go over there? No, she's still staring at me. I can't move. Suddenly, Ariel spoke up, complaining about how her throat was dry. Ariel's like, all right, it's almost like Ariel and Eloise are so in sync, and they're so much alike. That's the funny thing. I think we've kind of alluded to that before, this idea the two of them would probably hit it off really well. They're both thirsty. They're both very clever. They know how to control people. Yeah, Ariel, and additionally, add to that the fact that Ariel's like the type of, all right, Rudius, what do you want to do? Eloise is that, what do you want to do? Let's fix the situation and move on with our lives. Why are you sitting there messing around? Just deal with it. They're both that same mindset. But yes, there was plenty of water to go around. Glancing to her, she stared back at him meaningfully. There was some nice yellow fruits that were growing a while back. I hate to be a bother, but I'd like to try those. She then turned her gaze to Sarah. Would you mind picking some up for me? Sarah looked a little suspicious at the request coming at her, but she shrugged and got on her feet. Thank you. I suppose it would be safe for you to walk alone through the forest. Rudius, Fitz, would you escort her, please? Rudius realized Ariel had gotten fed up with their awkwardness. This was her way of getting them to talk it out amongst themselves. Sylphie responded, I think Rudius can handle it by himself. I'll stay here with you, Princess Ariel. Oh? You think they'll be alright alone? She's like, I'm sending you so that he doesn't sleep with Sarah. I think it's also like there's an aspect there that we're similar again to Eloise, where I start to think that Ariel's thinking things through like 5 steps ahead. Like this idea of, yeah, I'm also testing to see if you're comfortable with him, like you trust him, because he did mess up before. Sylphie responded, it's fine. He's not the kind of man that hides from danger. He technically is right now. Rudius is thinking to himself, was that what I was doing? Hiding? Yeah, it was true. He was hiding, both from Sarah and his past together. He didn't need to keep running. He had Sylphie and Roxy in his life now. His ED was a thing of the past, and he had a family now. Even a kid. Time to stop acting like a coward. Finally, after, 6 volumes, Rudius is finally stopping running away from this situation. Both Rudius and Sarah made their way into the forest to the yellow fruits. After gathering some, he decided it was time to find a way to start the conversation. They were old friends that bumped into each other. It would be sad to finish the job without talking, right? Yeah, that's pretty much what everybody reading this is thinking. You finally get to run into Sarah and you're not gonna fix this? He spoke up. So, you kept going on his adventure, huh? What's that supposed to mean? Yeah, it was a bad starter. But he couldn't be intimidated now. Deep breaths. He wasn't implying anything about her abilities. She knew that much herself. This was just the way that she was. He still knows deep down how she is. I think after all these years of them being separated, he still understands that this is sort of a side of her. He knows that she's tsundere. Well, Counter Arrow dissolved when Suzanne and Timothy got married, right? I was wondering what you and Patrice were doing with yourselves, that's all. Do you know what happened to him? He joined a different party when we broke up. Don't know where he is now. He's probably still an adventurer, assuming that he's not dead or crippled. Am I crazy here? This sounds... literally this volume, we talked about this. Why does this feel different? Suzanne, in this volume, said that once Rudius left, they weren't that great of a party, and so they just dissolved. They felt that they were mediocre. They lost their core party member, which at the time I was assuming was probably Mimir, even though Rudius temporarily kept them afloat. He wasn't their party member. So he kept them afloat for a little bit longer without Mimir. But they dissolved that point, and Patrice went back to become a soldier, apparently. So why is Rudius right here going, well, Counter Arrow dissolved when Suzanne and Timothy got married? No, they didn't. Not according to Suzanne. And why are you asking Sarah what happened to Patrice? Because he went off to become a soldier, apparently. This could be, maybe this is just him wanting to talk about something to Sarah. Maybe he's forgetting everything that he talked about with Suzanne. It doesn't indicate that, like, oh crap, I totally forgot. That's not what happened. But it just seems like a little bit inconsistency with the writing. I don't know if that's a translator fault or if, Refugin, are you okay? You didn't have a temporary stroke when you wrote this section, did you? Anyways, that aside, it's probably 7C's fault. Let's always blame 7C's. What about you, Sarah? I bounced around a whole bunch of parties for a while. This group scooped me up after I became an A rank, and I've been with them ever since. She had spent some time with the Amazons, it seemed. They seemed like the prettiest party he had ever encountered. Their muscular leader had a beautiful face, and their sub-leader made that scar look good. The young mage was kind of a brat, but she was definitely on the cute side. They couldn't compare to Roxy and Sylphie, though. Of course. No, not like I'm cheat on them or anything. You know, I don't think I've seen an all-female party before. Yeah, well, there's a lot of them in the lower ranks, I guess. But once you get past rank C or so, everyone's looking for more skill than anything else, so it's not too common. Reese hadn't seen any gender-based parties on the Demon Continent, even at lower ranks. But the Demon Continent was a special case with powerful monsters. That does make sense, this idea that, yeah, there could be, like, especially like the lower ranks, you have these fledgling adventurers going, all right, time to go out on our first adventure. And it's usually like a band of friends or something like that. They sometimes will go with like a theme or something like that. I mean, that's what we kind of face with the, God, I forget what their names were, the guys back on the Demon Continent. I mean, it's even with Roxy's situation and the dumb names they gave with that, the Blazers and stuff like that. And so I can see that being a case. Like, you know, a bunch of females, they're friends, and they're like, let's go on adventures together, but let's not let any of these boys join the party. It's just going to be us. We can be comfortable with each other. We can protect each other's backs, and they could pull it off. But it makes sense what she's saying is as you're going up the ranks, it's like, no, we need somebody that's skillful. We don't need somebody based on their gender. We don't need somebody based on, I don't know, that they have a beak. We can't be specific about some sort of quality or a visual aspect of somebody. We just need, can you swing a sword and kill something? That's the important thing. But it's interesting the idea that, counter to what she's saying, Reese has experienced a lot of adventuring himself, and yet he's never seen this, but yet she's acting as if it's something that's common. It could just be the fact that Reese is never looking for it, whereas Sarah was. This is my first time in one myself, but it definitely has its pluses. It gets you priority access to some clients for one thing, like this one. Oh yeah, I can see why you'd want an all-female party to guard a princess. Yes, Rudius thought it would be risky to trust a pretty young lady with some random gang of smelly, aggressive men. A lot of adventurers were one step away from being street thugs, which, yeah, I can see that, the idea. I mean, if they spend their whole life doing nothing but killing monsters and taking down targets, they're not too far from just a random thug on the street who's makes all their money by harming others. Even if in higher ranks they were more professional, this situation with this all-female group was much more reassuring. Not that women were always kind to each other, of course. It's like he's got to put that little qualifier at the end. Not saying that women can't be nasty. They can definitely be nasty. Also, being an all-female group removed the romantic drama. Hold the note there, Rudius. This world is open to Yuri. If Rudius had joined Counter Arrow, he'd probably be that with Sarah for the others. Yeah, they'd be the romantic drama. That said, the youngest of the Amazon threw herself on the leader and the sub-leader with squeals of affection. Once she realized how skilled Roxy was, she has been all over her. She understands the power of Roxy. Often sticking her tongue out at Rudius while squeezing Roxy's arm. Like you're gonna steal her away from him. No romance, huh? Really? Huh? Oh, her. Well, you get girls like that, but it's just less of a problem. It helps that nobody gets pregnant or anything, you know? True. They seem to be getting along. Even with Rudius and Sarah's painful past, Sarah seemed to be enjoying life just fine. He was happy for her, and a bit relieved. Finally gets that sense of she's not... That was what I was saying earlier, this idea of Rudius asking Suzanne about Sarah. It was this idea of like, yeah, you should go see her, because there's a fear that she is dealing with the same thing you deal with Edis. If you were so broken about everything that happened with Edis, why would you not have that immediate thought that you might be causing that to somebody else? Put yourself in their shoes. But that's probably why he's got so much relief here. Good. She's not destroyed by me. So anyways, what about you? What about me? I heard that you're married with a kid now, right? Sounds like you're enjoying yourself. Oh, who told you that? Suzanne, she sent me a letter a while back, you know? Sarah's tone started to sound accusatory. They broke up because of his performance problems in bed. And now he was with 2 women. He wasn't sure if she knew about his ED, but he had compared her unfavorably to a prostitute in public. That was no way to treat someone who had feelings for you. Yeah, that's not a good one. Well, I'm sorry, Sarah. What? I'm not asking you to apologize. She jumped to her feet, face flushed. Lips were pursed and trembling. Crap, he had pissed her off. He wasn't sure what to do. She sat back down and turned her back to him. He got up slowly, stepped forward to see her face. She was staring down with a sullen expression. To his surprise, she was more depressed than angry. That's where it hurts. Finally, jab right in the heart. It hurts. There's that aspect that he's better off and he's apologizing to her and she doesn't want to hear that. Sarah? Yeah, what? I know you don't want me to apologize, but I'm going to anyways. The way we broke up wasn't the best. So I don't know what to say, I guess. That's no excuse for ignoring you, though. I'm really sorry. Sighing, she looked up. Look, I just told you I don't want an apology, okay? If she didn't want an apology, then what? He was regretting not asking Sylvie for advice. He just doesn't know how to handle her. I need... What Master Fitz? What would Master Fitz do? Where's Master Fitz? Help me through this, Master Fitz. He's hopeless sometimes. But again, this goes back to that whole last perspective of Sarah back in Volume 7. She felt guilty. She did it. She was mean to him. She was terrible to him. Again, both sides had that same perspective. That's what makes the whole situation with Sarah so tragic. Both of them destroyed that relationship. Both of them felt guilty. Both of them, in the end, wanted to say sorry, but they couldn't. Mind if I sit next to you? Oh, won't your wife get mad at you? Nah, I'll tell her what happened when we bring the fruit back. Wait, so that was her? The sunglasses girl? The sunglasses girl? Tee, it's a secret. Didn't Suzanne describe her in the letter? Nah, she mentioned the name Sylphiette. And I mean, I didn't think that she'd be a royal bodyguard, you know? I guess this explains why you two seem to be so friendly, though. It's not just her, either. It's like... He thought that she knew that he has 2 wives now. So now he's literally like, oh yeah, by the way, I got a second one. It's like you didn't have to add this part to it. Again, he kind of mentioned this later, this idea of like, okay, I guess there is a point in which you've kind of said too much. It's not just her either. The blue-haired demon girl is my other wife. What? Her too? Isn't that interesting? Taking a seat next to Sarah, he caught a whiff of her scent. It was familiar from their brief time together years ago. After a moment of silence, Sarah spoke up. To tell you the truth, I was planning on coming by your house later on. Wait, what, really? Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to apologize to you for a really long time. You wanted to apologize to me? After you ran off, I found out about your condition, and I realized what a jerk I'd been. I made you into the bad guy, right? Got all mad and pitched a big fit. Didn't even stop to think that you might be hurting too, even worse than I was. Memories were uncomfortably fresh. The rage and humiliation on Sarah's face. He was hurt, but he knew he hurt her too. So when Suzanne wrote me, and I learned that you were in Shariah, I told myself I'd go see you. I knew this job was going to take us there. So I figured I'd take some time off to apologize. You know, for the way I acted back then. But here I am snapping at you again, right? God, I can't stand myself sometimes. It's very nice that she could admit that to herself, this idea of, this is me screwing up again. This is just how I am. Again, that's technically what Rudius is acknowledging from the very first part of their conversation. That's just how she is. Don't get intimidated. That's just Sarah. And even right here, she's acknowledging, that's me. And I hate it. She screwed up. She realized to herself she screwed up. And now she's screwing up again. They're so much alike. It kind of makes it sad that Sarah's not going to get with him right now. Pressing her face against her knees, her voice was barely audible. Sorry. He wanted to put his arms around her shoulder, but felt it inappropriate. Which that kind of hurts, but at the same time, I understand it. It's that idea that you want to... He was close to her. They were pretty much boyfriend-girlfriend. Again, acknowledging the idea that he did not find that he was in love with her at the time. He was trying to figure it out. But they were a couple. And they've been separated for a long time, and now they're back together, and he knows their boundaries now. There's been this separation, and that can't be anymore. Can be. Technically, Sylphie would be okay with it, but he doesn't want to do that. It's been a while now, so I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I was really in love with you back then or anything. Excuse me? The cause of my condition was this girl named Edis. We traveled across the demon continent together, but then she vanished on me all of a sudden. And that's when I met you, Sarah. I could tell that you liked me. I didn't feel that strongly about you, but I guess I wanted to move on. You know, put the past behind me. To be honest, I was just using you. He paused to swallow. So yeah, you don't really owe me an apology. Uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, but truthful statement. He's at least being fully honest with her. This is like such a nasty thing to say almost. I mean, I like that. I like this idea of, Sarah, just so you know, you can move on because I didn't really love you. Now, I don't necessarily... I can sort of agree with his mindset and the idea that I was trying to move on and I was using you to move on, but I don't think it was that simple. Yes, a lot of the whole sequence when they left the bar together and stuff like that was a lot of his mindset of like, okay, let's do this. Let's see if this can work. Let's move on. Let's step away from Edis, but I don't think it was entirely that. It's just kind of a, can I love again? Can I have this? He was telling himself that I can't have this. Don't set your expectations. Don't assume you're going to get anything because you're going to be let down. There was a lot of his own personal insecurities about being able to have somebody or being able to be with somebody because he screwed up back here. And he didn't want to screw up again. But yes, technically it is true. There was several points during that scenario that popped in his head, that he wanted to move on from Edis. It just still kind of hurts. I know this has to hurt for Sarah to hear, but maybe a good thing for her to hear because she knows that Rudius has 2 wives now. We don't know what's going through her head. She could be thinking, maybe I could be the third. But again, I think she's trying to move on. I think there is an element of her trying to move on. This could be that bump. Don't expect something from me. Just walk away. But I don't like this idea that because I did this wrong to you, you shouldn't apologize for what you did to me that you felt was wrong. Because if she denies that she has to apologize, she's going to hold on to what she still thinks she should apologize for. She needs to accept it and apologize for it. He assumed that she'd be angry, but that was fine. She was honest with him, and he felt he had to do the same for her, which is good. But instead of angry, she looked at him with a surprised face. Wow, you've changed. I have? Yeah, back in the day, you would never open up to me like that. Never even pretended to. I guess not. You never talked to anyone this casual either. Or if you did, it was kind of forced and awkward. Wait, really? Again, we're going back to that whole thing. This is yes, Rudius, that was you in Volume 7. And technically 8 and a bit of 9. Yeah, you seem so much more natural now. True, he wasn't speaking formally. After Edis left him, he was terrified of conflict and rejection. He took to speaking as politely as possible, in order to not offend anyone, but also to keep his distance too. It was simple enough. He didn't want to risk getting hurt, but now he wasn't afraid anymore. Cool. I think he is, piece by piece here and there, has acknowledged aspects of both of these mindsets, that it was a 2-parter. Him speaking formally the way that he was to be like submissive to everybody. Yes, sir. Can I do anything else for you, sir? Please don't hit me. Oh, you need that done? Okay, I'll help you with that, sir. Constantly, sir, ma'am. He wanted to be completely submissive to everybody. Super formal. But again, what they've also acknowledged here and there is that other aspect, which is to keep people at arm's length. Be super formal with them so that they can't have a personal connection with you. You're not casual with each other. You're not buddy-buddy with each other. He's finally kind of acknowledging both of these right now. Yeah, I was like that. I was too afraid of being hurt again. After Edis, I didn't want to be hurt. I wanted to be as distant as possible with everybody. And everybody got angry. Soldat hated it. And again, in this volume, we acknowledged that even Suzanne thought it was creepy. But thankfully, because he went to the university, because he met friends, because finally a lot of people were saying, let's be friends. Let's get closer. I think Zenoba is a huge part of that. Finally, he shed that. And so it's surprising to Suzanne when she talks to him now. It's surprising to Sarah now that she's talking to him. You would have never revealed this to me. You always kept yourself distant, and now you're finally opening up. It's weird. It's different. He has changed so much. Someone gave me a bit of confidence, I guess. Your wife, you mean? Yeah, after that night with you, I had the same problem for a couple of years consistently. Sylvie was the one who cured me. It was her first time, but she did everything she could, even used an aphrodisiac on me, and she got it working again. He went into some details. Sarah's face was turning red as she listened to every single word. It got a little embarrassing. Maybe there was such thing as being too open. You're being really comfortable with her right now. She's like, do you need to tell me all that stuff? Okay, I'll listen to you. So if she did all that for you, why did you go and grab a second one? Well, Roxy did just as much for me in her own way. He told her Roxy's story as well, Sarah listening curiously and holding her hand over her mouth. From time to time, he thought that he'd seen her nostrils flaring. But at the end of it, she looked a little sad. I don't think I could have done anything like that for you. Even if you told me everything back then. Maybe that's the reason you never fell for me. He thought maybe so. Sylvie and Roxy loved him. But he loved them even more. They changed his life for the better, and he fell for them because of it. It sounded a bit transactional, but it was fact. They won him by being there for him when he needed them. But that was what distinguished them from Sarah. It's honestly a very interesting route that Refugien is really taking with Sarah. This is literally where I think Refugien is essentially setting that line. And they kind of get into a little bit more later on with this conversation with Sylvie and Roxy. Is this idea that this is where it's almost drawing what is acceptable to Rudius as love or not. It's very curious later on, this idea of him mentioning the idea of what is his type. Those that would be there for him when he needed it. And yes, from Sarah's perspective and Rudius' perspective here, he's acknowledging that. They both acknowledge she couldn't do that. And Rudeus acknowledges, yeah, she couldn't do that. And that's why we can't be a thing. Now, I don't quite understand this in all sense. I mean, there is an element here of, I guess, Rudeus overly explaining their time in bed. Maybe that's what is, obviously flaring up her nostrils and making her go, crap, I don't think I could have done that. I guess that makes sense. If he was overly explaining about the aphrodisiac and what he did to, Sylphie and got really super aggressive, even with Roxy, mentioned that when he threw her on the bed and he was aggressive with her. And maybe he over-explained that, and that was like, Sarah was like, whoa, so you're that way in bed. I didn't really get that sense of you because your thing wasn't working. I'm guessing that's where it's kind of going, but it is, I guess, also an extension to the previous conversation, this idea that, I never loved you, and maybe this is a way of disconnecting that and going, yeah, I don't think we would ever probably, I guess, could have been a thing because I didn't go the extra mile. I failed you, essentially. Sarah's saying, basically, I failed you. There's a lot of directions that can go. Suddenly, Sarah jumped to her feet with a yelp of aggravation, putting both hands on her hips and glaring down at him. There's a signature pose. We got that signature pose again. Look, let's get one thing straight right now. I might have loved you back then, but at the end of the day, you ran off. I mean, I did want to apologize to you for being such a jerk, but that's it. I'm not remotely interested in giving another shot after all this time. She snorted and turned her There's a Sindete thing. She turned her head to the side and continued. And on that note, stop looking at me all apologetically. We're just old adventuring buddies, right? Try to act like it. There it is. We've said what we need to say. Disconnect. Leave it behind. Which is good. They've said what they need to say. There's no need to dredge it up any longer. But I think there's also an aspect of there of like, well, that's done. Rudeus and me is not a thing. Time to move on. Which sucks because we needed the Pikachu. And Sarah was the Pikachu. We needed the Pikachu. She had a hint of embarrassment, but also relief. It had taken a while, but they finally got their closure. It was a little bittersweet, but he found himself smiling. Again, after 6 or so volumes, we're finally closing that up. His approach was a mixture of Lenny and Persenna mode with Nanahoshi mode. This idea of like super friendly with Lenny and Persenna, like very open to each other, but Nanahoshi is like super keep your hands off, keep your distance kind of thing. So it's like one of those things like, yeah, I guess that technically makes sense. Because, yeah, he doesn't want to be, like, super close to, like, Lenny and Persenna, but he doesn't want to, like, keep that formal distance that Nahoshi has. So, yeah, it makes sense. And he kind of toned down the overall intensity of it, so it works perfect. Sarah's performance also improved noticeably, firing off shots exactly where they needed. So it kind of gives that sense that her game was off because he was present. In general, her role was to stand slightly back and calmly direct the flow of battle. It reminded him of how Suzanne used to shout out friendly orders. Again, that's kind of the hint that I got with her saying pretty much the same lines that Suzanne did. Sarah had a different style, but she kept their young mage on target and position. It was quite contrast to the impulsive but talented kid from the old days. But having someone younger to look at helped her mature. Whatever the case, she was the very picture of a veteran adventurer. Good to see our girl kind of growing up. I like it. The pilgrimage went off without a hitch. Just like that, their job was complete. The Renoan princess and her guards stayed overnight at Shiraya before the recuperated adventurers returned and they departed to the capital. Rudeus, Roxy, and Sylphie seen them off at the city wall. The young magician whined about having to leave behind her dear Miss Roxy. She even invited Roxy to join the group. But yes, Roxy declined. She was happy with her job and she was married. Apparently, the young mage's name was Elisa. It was the first time they actually mentioned that because they're yelling at her. Elisa, come on. Rudeus was happy Roxy declined them. If she showed any sign of interest, he would have to launch his patented cling and blubbering defense. No, Roxy, no. Dignity was a secondary concern here. He needed Roxy right where she was. Sarah gave her goodbyes to Rudeus, warning him not to compare his wives out loud. Otherwise, they'll never forget. At first, he was horrified to see Sarah, but now he was glad. The talk they had done them both good. She slightly punched him in the chest before walking off. A pretty casual farewell. And then she's off again. I hate these characters that I love coming back and then they just disappear like within the same chapter. It's like with Rajerd, finally shows back up, gone. But that's the life of the adventurer. That's the problem is a lot of people that Rudeus has found is either on a quest or as an adventurer. And so a lot of these people have to keep moving. They can't just stick around town and just, again, revolve around Rudeus as a main character. As Rudeus, Sylphie, and Roxy watched them walk off into the distance, Sylphie spoke up. Rudy, are you sure you're gonna let her go like that? What do you mean? I mean, you used to be in love with her, right? Nah, we weren't in love. We were a little awkward and confused together, that's all. Okay. She examined his face, seemingly unconvinced. Tell me something, Rudy. What is your type anyways? Roxy drew in close as well. Maybe they'd be happy if he said girls with small breasts. No, that might backfire. That's like one of those aspects of like, yeah, I like them small. And they're like, oh, so you're calling us small. No, don't. Good question. I used to have all these details worked out. Like a girl this tall with that shortcut and this body. I don't think I had it right though. He examined Sylphie and Roxy before continuing. It seems like girls that help me out when I'm in trouble get a special place in my heart. Sylphie smiled. Oh, does that mean I'm special, Rudy? Obviously. You had cured something that I had been suffering for years. I'm very happy right now. And I think you're the one that made it possible. Oh yeah? Good thing I worked up the courage back then. Roxy had an expression that read, what about me? He hugged her. Of course, she pulled him out into the world and pieced him back together after Paul's death. He owed everything to her. Anyways, I guess that means that there aren't that many special girls out there for me. No need to be anxious, Sylphie. I won't be picking up any more wives, I promise. Don't say that. She took his hand. Okay, I'm just going to repeat myself for a second, Rudy. As long as they're special to you, and you're special to them, I'm all right with it. I guess Sarah wasn't quite in that category, though. Pause for a minute here. I do like what Ruiz is saying here. It is that acknowledgement that here, back then, this is how I used to think. I used to think in that mindset of, okay, they have to be this big, they have to be this tall, they have to have this hairstyle, they have to have this kind of face, basically physical things. And it's a bold acknowledgement for himself to say, this is what I used to think was the ideal woman. But something changed. He realized at some point, and it's partly to do with what he kind of went through, this idea of him having this performance issue, is that it kind of turned this aspect that I fell in love with people that were there for me. People that came in and did something in order to lift me back up. They put aside their own self, their own desires, their first time or whatever, in order for me to be better. That's who he falls in love with. That's those special girls for him. It is kind of that middle area for me. It's like it's getting rid of this idea of the physical, but at the same time, it's not fully 100% emotional. It's kind of in the middle area there. This idea that instead of these two things, it's just an aspect of somebody that's willing to be there for me. And then it goes into the area of emotional. It goes into the area of love. Ruiz, still to this point, remains like the most broken person mentally that I can ever kind of read into. Because there is times where I feel like he's so simple-minded. Like again, here he's saying literally, hey, Sylphie, yeah, you're one of the chosen ones because you fixed my ED. That's romantic. But again, that's his mindset. It's not that she fixed his ED. It's that she pulled him out of a dark place. Roxy over here. You pulled me out of a dark place. That's enough. These two pulled me out of a dark place. They put me first and were there for me. Whereas all these other people that he's thinking about, like Edis, again, misunderstanding, she left me, abandoned me. Then there's Sarah. She didn't stick around. She abandoned me. That's enough in his eyes that makes a special woman. That's his type, which is interesting. Which is very, very interesting. But yeah, Rudius suddenly remembered a red-headed girl who was very special to him one time. He remembered her smile, how they struggled to get home from a far-off land, how she wept when he nearly died. And he remembered the last night they spent together. I like that that's finally these things that he's acknowledging. It's so sad that every time he thinks of Edis, he always thinks of, she abandoned me, she left me, I wasn't good enough for her, what did I do wrong with her? He never remembers all this other stuff they did together. Yeah, that she literally bawled her eyes out and pleaded out for anybody to save his life. That Edis. Not the bad part. Again, like the whole situation with Paul, not acknowledging the cracks, but acknowledging who they are. It's easy to make somebody kind of the sum of your worst experiences with them. But yes, Edis abandoned him. Or so he thought for so many years. Rejerd, a man that he deeply trusted, was convinced Ruius was mistaken. What if he was right? What would happen then? Sylphie. It's like he's thinking all this. Sylphie, gotta talk. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I might end up breaking that promise again. That's all right. I didn't accept it in the first place, remember? Just make sure that you bring her to meet me first. I'm not going to tie you down, but I'm not going to let you marry a girl that doesn't love you. Got it. That is a promise, okay? No mistresses, no secret children. Don't hide anything from me, unless you want to make me mad. Right. Okay, then. I'll be interested to see what number 3 is like. Assuming you managed to catch her. It's Charmander. What do you think it's gonna be? It's Charmander, Sylphie. Call her by her name. It's Charmander. Very interesting. This right here is a very, very interesting little shift here. And you guys gotta mention a little bit. He says, my sweet little Sylphie is starting to develop something of a commanding aura. Sylphie is changing. And I personally like it. Not long ago, she was modestly claiming that she had only gotten lucky. But she found herself some confidence. That was a good sign. The girl seemed a little anxious ever since she married him. And that worried him sometimes. All right. He had to make sure that the second promise, he had to promise to keep that second promise at least. In Legend of the University, number 10, the boss is a hopeless womanizer. Again, like I said, I like this little last bit because it's kind of like, I hate the fact that Roxy's just kind of standing there. She's not really saying anything. It's like, can Roxy get involved? But that's sort of the, I guess, the chemistry they've kind of developed between the three of them. This idea that it almost is like Rudius always wants to make sure that Sylphie's okay with things before he makes a move. You would kind of think that he'd be checking with Roxy, like, okay, Roxy, you cool with it too? I might have a third one. But it almost feels like Sylphie's like the controller of the family. She's the gatekeeper. Rudius comes in and he's got Edis by the hand. He walks up to the front door and Roxy's kind of sweeping the porch. And Rudius is like, hey, Roxy, excuse me. Opens the door. Sylphie, can she come in? Roxy's like, okay, I guess that's fine. I don't care. Roxy doesn't care. But no, it's like, I do like this, though. It is an idea that instead of Sylphie, I like the fact that instead of Sylphie saying right here, well, if it makes you happy, bring anyone you want to bring in. No. She's saying, bring them to me first. Don't keep a secret. Just bring them to me first. Let me see them. Let me see that they will love you just as you will love them. That's the important thing. What happened with Roxy? When Rudius brought Roxy in, Sylphie seen Roxy is in love. That girl right there is in love. That's all she needed. I think if she's seen that Roxy was standing there going, look, fidgeting around like, yeah, what are we doing here? All right, let's get this over with. I think it might be a little bit different story. But I like that she's vocalizing now. That's been the important thing the most. And again, it's another thing that I like the fact that Rudius is acknowledging the same thing I'm acknowledging because it makes me not think I'm crazy. Because for so long, for so many volumes, when I was complaining about Sylphie not being vocal, everybody got angry at me. Rudius acknowledges it too. She is changing. She's building self-confidence. And I like that it's kind of tying in what we sort of had with the discussion when they came back from doing the lightning spell. This idea that Sylphie was saying, I was just in the right place at the right time. The only reason he's with me, the only reason he married me is because I fixed this issue he had and he jumped at me. Now it's turning into, we are a family. You, me, Roxy, we are a family. Let's talk these things through. Don't keep secrets. If you want somebody else in the family, bring them in. We'll discuss it. That kind of thing. That's all she's asking for. It's perfectly fine. If you're in love and somebody loves you, perfectly fine. But we got to talk about this. Though it does kind of continuously makes it more complicated, this whole relationship. You're just going to make more people that he has to make happy. Which again, to Ellen Lace's whole discussion, it's not like you're with them 24/7. You can spend time with each one of them. It's cute. It's a cute little dynamic, and like I said, I really do like. I agree with Rudius here. I do like that fact that she's finally talking her mind. She's finally speaking what she wants out of the decision. It's literally Sylphie saying, instead of whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, it's now, I have at least one request. Two requests, technically. That you bring them to me, not hide it, but two, that they look like they're in love. But yeah, great 2 chapters. Like, this is a great Mushoku Monday compared to last week. Last week, it turned out to be a lot more enjoyable than I thought it would be. Honestly, 7 and 8, I thought when I read them, was like, bore. But then I did the Mushoku Monday recording. It was a lot better. And then Mushoku Monday happened here, like, not even an hour ago as the recording of this. And it was a lot more funner than I thought it would be. But these 2 chapters, 9 and 10, were absolutely fantastic. 9 just broke me to death. I'm kind of tired right now because of it. But obviously 10 being really fantastic to finally have that closure around Sarah. Not just that, but again, right here, this last part is so good. It at least acknowledges the idea that, yes, harem, but structure, really, structure, and true feelings coming out in the open. Even though, again, unfortunately, we don't get to see what Roxy says about this. Again, I think Roxy's just kind of there. As long as I get to be here, I'm fine. And whatever Sylphie says, I agree. As long as she doesn't have Rudeus kick me out, I'm fine. I'll agree with whatever she says. But again, especially with that, after chapter 9, you see that the two of them are kind of in sync. The two of them want to be Zenith and Lilia. They are the two wives that will be friends just like them and support Rudeus just like they did Paul, even though they kicked Paul out of the house for a while. And wouldn't have, and I don't know, could have, wouldn't have a threesome. Anyways, yeah, fantastic Mushoku Mondays. I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Mondays as much as it was for me to record it. And I will have a lot of fun editing it, which I'll probably cry a bunch more. And then I'll have fun watching all of you in the chat cry as you watch me cry. That's what that's what Volume 12 is all about. But yeah, greatly appreciate you guys' support. Thank you guys for that drop dive for the premieres. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hit the like button before you leave here. Greatly appreciate all of you guys' support, all your kind words, everything. A lot of kind of nice words we had in the comments here recently in the Discord. Really greatly appreciate it. It means so much to me. Like I said before, this is more for me than it is for you guys sometimes. But yes, additionally, everybody that supports monetarily, Patreon, tips, links, memberships, all that stuff, it means so much to me. You guys are fantastic. It means the world to me. With all that said, all that mushy stuff aside, as per usual, until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. I caught my fist. Okay, kiddo. Just try to make things something I can actually do. Okay, kiddo. At the slightest vibration, she'd pull her rod up with a At the slightest vibration, she pulled her rod up with a with the slightest Norn agreed and took her up. Norn took her up on the offer. Norn took her up on the offer, but looked conflicted. Norn took her up on the offer, but looked a bit. Norn took her up on the offer, but looked a bit. Norn took her up on the offer, but looked a bit conflicted. Norn took her up on the, shrugging her shoulders. She smirked, bringing tea and snacks to her whenever she was up late. Bringing tea and snacks to her whenever she was working late, studying for the next day. Table covered with a nice white cloth, with tables with tables on them. Roxy felt that Paul and Zenith were the perfect wives. He knows that Roxy joined Sylphie and the knight to her former position. Roxy and Rudeus introduced themselves before the gourd. And yes, from both Sarah's perspective and Rudeus' perspective. From Sarah's perspective and Rudeus' perspective. Greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Suddenly, Sarah jumped on her feet with a yelp. Suddenly, Sarah jumped to her feet with a yelp of aggression. I'm remembering this part. No!